Morning. Today we have a very exciting video. No, I can't support that. Today's video, completing the standard form portion of a small claims court plaintiff's claim. Come on, these are tutorials on civil procedure. How exciting could they possibly be? The first thing that we need to do is Google small claims court forms. And we need to access the site Rules of the Small Claims Court Forms. That brings us into a site which has all of the different forms by form number, form title. We're going to scroll down to Form 7A, which is the plaintiff's claim, and we're going to access the most recent version of the plaintiff's claim. Now, I'm an old guy, so I have to increase the size of this. Whoops, that's not the right way. Here we go. The first thing that the form wants us to do is to fill in the particulars of the small claims court in which we're going to commence our action. Where do we commence our small claims court action? In order to answer that question, we have to look to Rule 6.01 of the Small Claims Court Rules. But even before going there, I would like to read to you something from a decision by Deputy Judge Winnie of the Kitchener Small Claims Court. He says, "The policy behind Rule 6.01 is that convenience to plaintiffs is sacrificed in favor of convenience to defendants." Now that's something to keep in mind as we look at Rule 6.01. The general rule behind 6.01 is that we commence our plaintiff's claim in the jurisdiction in which the defendant or defendants reside or carry on business. Now, if there is more than one defendant, and one of them happens to reside or carry on business in, let's say, Toronto, and the other defendant happens to reside or carry on business, let's say, in Mississauga, then as the plaintiff, we are able to choose between Toronto or Mississauga, and we can choose whichever jurisdiction best suits us. Now, that's the general rule. We bring our action where the defendant or defendants reside or carry on business. There is an exception. In fact, there are several exceptions. The first exception is that we can bring our action where the cause of action arose. Now, if we're going to use this exception, we have to be careful. This exception does not say that we can commence our plaintiff's claim where the contract was made or where the contract was formulated. Instead, it says we can bring our claim where the cause of action arose. Now, what that means is that we can bring it where the breach of contract took place. Not where the contract was necessarily formulated, but where the breach took place, or perhaps where the tort occurred. Now, there are some other exceptions. For instance, if there isn't a courthouse where any of the defendant or defendants resides or carries on business, then what we have to do is we have to choose a courthouse or the courthouse which is closest to where the defendant or defendants reside or carry on business. Also, Rule 6.01 sub 2 allows the court to make orders with regards to balance of convenience. So even though a plaintiff may properly follow 6.01, nonetheless, the court can change the location of the courthouse if, in fact, the court finds that, based upon the balance of convenience, the trial ought to take place somewhere else. So, with that in mind, let's get back to that standard form and let's complete it. For the sake of our example, let's pretend that our corporate profile search confirmed that 1817035 Ontario Inc. carried on its restaurant business here in Toronto, Ontario. As a result, what we're going to do is choose the Toronto Small Claims Court. We're going to type in its address, telephone number. We're then going to scroll down to where it says Plaintiff Number 1, and that's where we're going to type in the name of our corporate client. And we know that that's its correct name because we've done a corporate profile search on our client. We're going to fill in its address. We also have the option of including its phone number and fax number. And if we're representing that corporation, we're going to type in our details. And of course, if we're a lawyer or a paralegal, we need to also include our law society number. And we will most definitely include our phone number and our fax number. We're then going to go down to defendant number 1. We're going to type in the name of our defendant. Now, we know that that's its correct name because, once again, we've done a corporate profile search. It carries on business as Jolly Good Restaurant, and we know that to be the case as a result of our business name search. We also know its registered address, so we're going to type that in. And again, we also have an option for a phone number and a fax number. Now, in this particular case, we're not only going to sue the corporation, but you may recall that Joe Jolly had also given his personal guarantee with regards to the debts of the corporation, so we're also going to include Joe Jolly as an additional defendant. Now, scrolling down, you can see that we reach a point where it says reasons for claim and details. Explain what happened, including where and when, then explain how much money you are claiming or what goods you want returned. If you're relying on any documents, you must attach copies to the claim. Now, I'll tell you what I like to do here. I usually don't fill this in on the form. Instead, what I like to do is I like to simply put in, whoops, how about that? That's better. See schedule attached. What I like to do is I like to prepare the pleading separately, and you'll see the reasons why once we come to our next video, which is part 3, preparation of the pleadings. Scrolling down, we come to a point where we have to type in how much money is owed, and in this case what we're going to do is we'll just assume that the amount of $12,000 is owed on account of goods that were rendered to the defendant corporation by our corporation. Now, because we're going to be putting our pleading on separate pages, we're going to check this box that says additional pages are attached because more room was needed. Now, we also have an opportunity to claim prejudgment interest. Now, if our client has invoices, perhaps net 30 days, things like that, what we can do is we can ask for interest beginning 30 days after the first invoice was issued, or perhaps if there is no interest on those invoices, what we would do is we might just type in from commencement of the action, and instead of being perhaps under an agreement or a rate of interest that might be on the face of an invoice, what we would do is we would check the box that we're going to be claiming interest from the date of commencement of the action under the Courts of Justice Act. Next, we just simply fill in the date on which the item was prepared. Oh, and where are we now? We are in 18 already. And then, of course, the date that it's going to be issued on. Now, when it comes to issuing, what we're going to do is we're going to review issuing the claim in a subsequent video. And that's pretty much it. That's as easy as it is. I couldn't ask for anything easier with regards to filling in the standard form. So, next video, we'll get into the more complex issues of preparing the actual pleading to the claim. Whoops, hold on. Didn't we say earlier that we needed to do an additional defendant? Oh, well, that's absolutely right. So what am I thinking? What we need to do is we need to go back to the list of forms that are available, and you can see that we've got form number 1A, which is additional parties. And what we're going to do is click on that form, open it up. And these little tiny forms again. There we go. Now what we're going to do in this particular case is, since we have an additional defendant, we'll click Defendant. It's going to be the second defendant. And we've done searches on Joe Jolly. We know that his last name, his legal last name, is Jolly. And we have discovered that his first name is Joseph with a PH. We also know, however, that he likes to go by Joe Jolly. Next, we'll type in his address, which we already did a land registry office search on. I hope it was lame. And that was here in Toronto. You can tell I'm not the most proficient typist in the world. And of course then just his postal code here, which let's just do anything. Of course we wouldn't be doing just anything if this were a real case. We'd have to type in his real postal code. But there you go. There is the additional parties form, which is commonly known as page 1A, which will be attached to the standard form. All right, now we're complete. And with that, I hope to see you again for part 3 of preparing the plaintiff's claim. Thanks a lot. See you soon.